Thanks for listening to Remake Rewind, the podcast where we decide if remakes and reboots should have happened. I'm Mike, as always, and with me I've got my two co-hosts. I've got Double D. What's up, Double D?
Yo, Mike.
And I've got Alex. What's up, Alex?
Yo, Mike.
Hey, Alex.
So today we are talking about the first of our I think we're doing 3 Halloween specials this year. We already know what they're gonna do. So this first one's gonna be
Stephen King's It.
Stephen King's It, and we're doing the miniseries as well as both parts 1 and part 2 of the new live action cinematic masterpiece. I don't know
Basically,
if you
what
can call
Mike's
it
saying
masterpiece
is
yet.
we're doing a lot of work for you guys here.
Hey, this still
movie
isn't
watching.
anywhere near as much content as when we did The Punisher.
That was a lot of Punisher.
That was 18 hours of poning.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, we did the entire first season and all 3 movies. That was work.
Godzilla must have been long, too.
No, we only did 4 Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
That was a lot. That was the first episode. But anyway, we're not talking about those things. We're talking about the Stephen King classic, It. And what are your guys' relationship with It? Have you guys seen the miniseries before?
No, never. I've only seen the new one.
What about you, Alex?
Similar. Like, I've seen scenes, but I've never watched the whole entirety of it.
Yeah, I'm the same thing. I've seen scenes online and clips, on YouTube videos, and I've seen GIFs, and of course, everybody knows Tim Curry's portrayal as Pennywise. But yeah, I've never actually watched the entire thing. I've already seen It Chapter 2, and of course, I saw the first It movie in 2016. Did it come out in 2017 or 2016? 2017. Saw that when it came out in theaters, and of course, we went through and watched these again. I've also read the book. Have you guys read the book before?
No. I started the audiobook, but I never finished.
Yeah, well, I mean, I listened to the audiobook. I didn't actually read it. But,
Nice.
oh, God. I just got to say, before we get into the movies, I'm not going to, spend a ton of time on the books, but I will bring up some stuff. The book is rough. It's fucking disturbing. It's graphic. It's violent. It's just a fucked up book. And the movies are pretty fucked up. I think this might be an episode where we might want to do a trigger warning for sexual assault, violence, domestic violence, and whatnot, because the Stephen King books are fucking dark, and It is by far one of his darkest, more fucked up books. So if you have any weird trigger warnings or anything like that, just don't get triggered. Just don't listen to the episode. We understand. We won't hold it against you.
Get mad at Mike,
Yeah.
not us.
Not Stephen
Yeah. Anyway, I'm ready to start talking about the movies. We're going to start talking about the 1990 miniseries. Who's got a synopsis for me?
This one's from Blake. In 1960, a group of social outcasts who were bullied by a gang of greasers led by Henry Bowers are also tormented by an evil demon who can shapeshift into a clown and feed on children's fears and kill them. After defeating the demonic clown as kids, it resurfaces 30 years later, and they must finish it off as adults once again.
Nice.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. Thanks, Blake.
Yep, thanks, Blake. The one thing I thought that was kind of weird was the opening credits, because this was a TV series. It says special appearance by Tim Curry. Like, he's not the titular It. Like, he's in it a lot.
He shows up in like the first 2 minutes.
Yeah, and he's in it consistently, and even in scenes where you don't physically see him, his voice is in the movie quite a bit. It's weird that it's a special appearance and not, guest starring or starring Tim Curry. And they had to really push to get Tim Curry to do this movie or series, because he had just come off of doing Legend, and he was the Darkness, which was a ton of prosthetics, and he didn't want to do prosthetics. So they really had to sell him on this movie. And I mean, he is iconic in the role. Everybody knows Tim Curry in this role, and everybody still, a lot of people are legitimately terrified of clowns because of Tim Curry.
Yeah, I really preferred this Pennywise to the newer Pennywise.
Really?
Is it? Why is that?
I mean, just like the interactions he has with the kids and the adults, I think I enjoyed more so than in the new one. I think
Interesting.
I mean, we'll go over it when we get the new
Yeah.
one. But I like
actually,
this one a lot. The interactions between them.
I'm torn, and this is going to be one of those ones where we go back to the original, I think, a lot once we start dissecting the second portion. So I think we'll probably go through this fairly quickly and then go back to it a lot because I'm really torn as somebody who's read the book. It's both movies, I'd say, are very... They definitely honor the source material in different ways, and I think each version is better in their own ways. But I also think both of them have some major flaws as well.
Well, I'll agree with that. I mean, just to expand on what I was saying, I enjoyed the interactions they had, like when he was just scaring them. But I think the actual scary scenes that were supposed to be scary and stuff, I think the newer ones did that better.
Right, and that comes with being a multi-million budget.
Right.
Well, also
going to the
because
theaters.
it's a mini series too, so there's like limitations what they can do with the show.
Well, and then this movie, like this miniseries, was iconic at the time. It was like the biggest thing like ever on TV outside of like Super Bowls and stuff like that. It's so hard not to like saying it all the time feels weird because that's the name of the the material. But this movie broke records. It really pressed the envelope for what was allowed on TV because this miniseries is super bloody, like super bloody. Like the blood coming out of the photo book, the blood coming out of the sink, all that different stuff. Like this much blood hadn't been on TV before, so they really had to fight to get this on the air on network television. Like this aired on ABC. So it's a big deal. And honestly, like it's 3 hours, it's just over 3 hours long, which is crazy because the whole movie that covers the whole book is only 20 minutes longer than It Chapter 2. Which is insane. So the second half of the cinematic version is almost as long as this entire miniseries, which covers the whole thing. So what are some highlights in this for you guys?
Tim Curry.
Yeah,
Tim Curry.
Tim
Tim
Curry.
Curry would be great.
Seth Green.
Oh yeah, dude, I love Seth Green, the child character.
Yeah, he
loved it.
played Richie Tozier. The thing that I think is funny, and I was watching Without a Paddle the other day. And then I was watching something else. Oh, and then Katrina and I watched Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, and he's in it. And then randomly I watched something else, and Seth Green was in it. Because there was a period of time where he was in, like, everything. He has looked exactly the same for, like, 20 years.
Yeah, he barely grew.
Like, when so in this movie, he was 16 years old, playing a 12-year-old. And he looks pretty much the same as he did in, like, Austin Powers.
100%. Just
Like
looks
10
less
years later.
tired.
Yeah, he doesn't. He looks almost the same. He just has a flat top.
Yeah, which fit him.
Yeah, it
very
did.
well.
I think I love Seth Green. I think he's a very underrated actor. I wish he was in more things. I thought he was honestly probably the strongest thing in the movie.
Beep beep, Richie.
Beep beep, motherfucker.
But
I
I guess in the book that's supposed to tell him to shut up.
Shut
but
up.
they were just using it like a greeting.
Yeah, in the book, Richie Tozier's super annoying, and he does a lot of like racist accents. So he has like a racist Irish accent. He has like a racist like Mexican accent, and he is super annoying, and he like never shuts up. So yeah, that's the way of saying like shut the fuck up, bro. I think he's by far the best, and I think the first half of this movie
With the
is
kids, yeah.
far better than the second half.
Yeah.
Because the second half, the child actors are way better than the adults. Like the adults, I'm just gonna say were terrible.
I feel like they fit a TV movie.
Like,
You know what I mean?
The
Like,
problem is, I feel like the kids were better actors though, and you have to look at it. So it's what is it? Jonathan Landis, is that his name? The kid who played young Bill.
Young Bill.
Jonathan Brandis, not Landis. Jonathan Brandis, he played the same year he played Bastian in Neverending Story Part 2. A few years later, he was in The Ladybugs with Rodney Dangerfield. And then, believe it or not, he died the same year as John Ritter in 2003.
Ouch.
Yeah, he killed himself, unfortunately, at the age of 27, so that's unfortunate. But he's okay. I think he was better than the adult Bill.
Yeah.
Seth Green was
the
great.
Stan guy, like there's like scenes where they show like, oh, the kids do something and their adult counterpart does it. So Stan, as a kid, he would like rub his ear and it looked all right. But when I seen like the adult Stan rubbing his ear, I'm like, the fuck you doing? Like
It's
just
so unnatural.
And
yeah.
speaking of the adult Stan, there's something in this movie that makes no sense, and they get it right in the cinematic version, and then it's this, which is the way it's in the book, is there's Stan kills himself, and that's fairly early in the book. And this, it's pretty much like the opening of the second half of the miniseries movie thing. But later on, the losers are like hanging out somewhere, and they open a refrigerator because they want to have a drink, and they see Stan's head. But it's the adult Stan's head, who they've never met before. They wouldn't know exactly who that is.
As soon as they open it, Stan.
Yeah, they just know it should have been in the book. It's the kid, like it's they see their childhood friend, because they wouldn't know what he looks like. But I digress. They wanted to give the adult actor something to do, I guess.
Well, I guess also it'd be rough to show like a kid's head in the TV show.
That's true.
That's true. So the thing about this, which I think is hard, and to justify this movie, I don't want to say justify this movie, because I hadn't seen it and I had seen the cinematic ones first. And I can tell you, going into It Chapter 2, I liked it. I didn't like it as much as Part 1 because I think I went into it thinking it was going to be way gnarlier because there was once upon a time I wanted to be a pediatrician. I used to teach kids how to swim. I taught math at an elementary school for my internship when I was at UC Davis. So I really don't like seeing kids get hurt in movies. And when a kid's in pain, it's the worst thing in the world to me. And the first cinematic It movie is super gnarly. Like, you see kids getting hurt and you see like kids getting their arms bitten off. So this almost seemed comical because every time somebody dies, it just like fades to black kind of thing. So it was like, and once again, it's for TV, but I didn't find this scary at all. I found it kind of laughable, and I don't know. I guess the question I want to ask is, do you guys think that in the 90s this was good, or was it just the best that it could have been? Like, was it bad in the 90s that it was just as good as it possibly could have been, or is this just bad in retrospect because it's dated?
I think it has a lot to do that it is a TV movie, right? Because like you have RoboCop, which is super bloody and sometimes scary. Around 2 years earlier than that, and
right?
Yeah,
I think they could have done better, but I think they were limited by being a television.
Yeah,
series.
like Evil Dead came out before this, and it's like way more gory and intense.
Right. Well, and the thing that's weird, and once again, that's because you can show things in the theater that you can't on TV. Right. But then there were also things about this miniseries that were very cinematic. Like, there were some very long takes.
Yeah.
Which is not something you normally do in TV. Well, long takes are really hard. There's one that's actually really impressive towards the end of the first half when they go to fight Pennywise in the sewer the first time. They all get in a circle to try to like strengthen each other's resolves. And Bill sees Georgie, and then Bev sees her dad, and then a werewolf comes and grabs Richie. And that's all a single take. And they would, zoom, they would rotate. So what they would do is they would rotate the camera, and then the child actor who playing Georgie would leave, and then the adult actor playing the dad would pop in, and then they would zoom back in. And they kept moving, but it was like one long take. And when you're dealing with child actors, like, it's actually pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive, to do that on something. Yeah. Because, we talked about long takes when we covered Old Boy. And, of course, Daredevil is super famous because every season has, a super long take fight scene. They're incredibly difficult, and they take a lot of planning. And I thought, I was really impressed with this, and I thought, man, the guy who directed this must have gone on to do some great things. He didn't. He made some pretty god-awful films, and he did a lot of TV stuff, but hasn't really done anything since, 2004. So I thought for sure this guy would have gone on and done some really big things with how iconic this was, and he really did it.
He did one episode of Baywatch.
So what are some highlights in the movie for you? Anything from plot points or action beats do you guys kind of want to go over?
I want to talk about Henry Bowers and why he was such a dick.
Dude, and the thing, this Henry Bowers is the tamest of the three between the two versions that we're going to cover in the book.
Yeah.
What's funny is apparently the actor who played Henry Bowers in this was super nice. He had to say the N-word, and apparently he couldn't do it, and the director had to it's fine, do it. And so he apologized to the kid who played Mike Hamlin
every take.
Every take, because he couldn't do it. He was such a sweetheart. But Henry Bowers in the book is a monster. And in this he's bad. He goes to carve his name in Ben's belly, but in the book, like he literally wants to kill everybody as a child. He kills his father. He
doesn't he kill?
There's a point where he
dog or something like that.
He doesn't kill anyone's dog. His father killed. Oh no, he does. He kills Mike Hamlin's dog in the book, and then his dad killed Mike Hamlin's family's chickens, because he's a racist. So like Henry Bowers is racist. He's a bigot. Like to the point where like his friends hide stuff. Like there's a scene in the book where like his two friends like jerk each other off in a dump. No, I'm like not even kidding. Like that happens. Both movies are super like mellow when it comes to like the book.
Yeah.
Like part of and they made this even more mellow than in the movie, but like once they decide to go, they make that agreement like, hey, if we think we killed it, but if it ever comes back, like we need to come back and do it again. In the book they do like a Blood Brothers thing where they all cut their hands and whatnot, but Bev for some reason sleeps as a 12-year-old with every single boy. And they don't do that either. In the movie, they do like the blood ceremony. In this, they just like, hey, just promise me you'll come back. It's fine. Just say you're gonna.
I love you guys.
I love
You
you
promised. Do you remember your promise?
guys. So one of the things I thought was kind of funny, I thought Bill was a dick in this movie.
Oh, he was.
Like when at the beginning of the movie, you see a little girl get attacked by Pennywise. Mike Hamlin shows up, and then he finds a picture of Georgie, and he decides to call everybody. So when he calls Bill, he just like picks up the phone, and Bill's like, "Do I know you?" He picks up the phone, and
he's like,
Mike is like, "Bill, do I know you?" And then like,
remember?
"It's Mike. I'm sorry." And, like,
it's like,
what? And then like later on, when he actually makes it to Derry, he shows up to Mike's house. And he goes, "Isn't this like the poor neighborhood?" And Mike, or this used to be the poor neighborhood. And Mike's like, "Yeah, it still is, but I'm a bachelor, so I don't need much. And the house is paid off." And then you walk into the house, and it's a pretty nice house.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, for one guy, it's like, "Fuck you, Bill, fucking 1%er, fucking asshole."
isn't it basically Stephen King though? Like it's
Yeah, Stephen King always puts a Stephen King character in the books. This one particularly in the 1990s, Stephen King had a ponytail at this time, and this Bill had a ponytail. Bill's bald in the books. Yeah,
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's bald. He's like balding in the books. One of the things I thought was interesting in this, and once again, it's kind of hard to talk about these movies without talking about the other ones, is it almost seems like Bill's supposed to be the hero and the leader, but it kind of seems like as kids Richie was.
I mean, Richie definitely, I think, built more confidence in the kids.
Right, and he was also just right away like, this isn't real. Like he tells Bill like, hey, this isn't real, and then Bill has to like shake himself out of it when they're all together, and then Beverly, this isn't real, like nothing's there, and then the werewolf comes to him, and he's just like, I said this isn't real.
Yeah.
Which is weird because
Good job,
as an
Seth
adult,
Green.
he was the one that was kind of like the biggest bitch, like wanting to leave all the time.
Yeah.
Like Eddie was scared, but he kind of was like too scared to like leave. He just was a follower, but like Richie wanted to go, but he was still kind of like commanding. Like it wasn't until like Bill never stepped up and was the leader until everybody was going to leave, and he's just like, well, I'm going to go down there by myself, and I hope you guys come. And then they all did, but I never felt like Bill was the leader, and he's supposed to be.
No, I felt like Ben actually was a little bit more of a leader than Bill was.
At certain points, but Bill almost killed himself at the beginning of the movie, which is a little strange.
You mean Ben?
Or yeah, Ben. Yeah, Ben was
He
going to jump
almost
off of a
jumped
building.
Yeah.
It's,
I like how they
think-
called him Fat Boy, and he was just chubby.
I mean, but you also have to look at it like in the 60s. Like
Yeah.
fat back then is a little bit different because they didn't have processed food. Like for the 60s, he was pretty fat.
Yeah. I mean,
So-
comparatively to everyone else, he
Yeah.
was. But
I kind of want to talk about the special effects in this movie because certain things looked like Pennywise looked great. Like he looked fine. The blood coming out of the book was fine, but there were certain things that were
the
just
blood was a little too thick, but they did okay with it.
well, and it was inconsistent. Like there were some scenes where it was like just super red, and other scenes where it was dark, like blood.
Yeah.
the shower scene.
Some of
was
the things
alright.
were.
I like
Which
the
one?
shower scene.
Yeah, that was like this.
Was that
weird.
claymation or what
It was
was
like
it?
weird stop motion claymation as he like climbed out of the drain,
Yeah.
and then they did some like stop motion stuff for the spider. And I'm
Oh,
confused
God.
because people like make fun of that,
The spider.
but the spider. But I think it actually looked pretty rad for like 1990. that stop motion animatronic thing, like it doesn't look any worse than some of the things that you would see like in Evil Dead.
I don't
like
think
the
it
Fly and
looked
stuff. Yeah.
bad for what it was. I just thought it was dumb.
That's what it is in the book.
I know. It's just dumb.
Now the problem is that one of the things that neither movie does is it is actually a interdimensional
Creature,
being,
alien thing.
and they don't go into that at all in this. Like we don't in this version, we don't know what it is. Like we don't get any kind of history on it other than going back maybe about 100 years. There's a point where Mike Hamlin's giving a report and he goes, 30 years ago there was a fire at the bar, and then 30 years before that there was an explosion at the steel mill, and that's about it. In the newer one, which we'll get into, like they go into saying like it's been here for thousands of years or something like that. But in the book, like it's literally got there like before life even existed on Earth, and it was just like in slumber until life started coming, and it's been around for as long as life has been on Earth. But then there's like a counterpoint, so it's like an evil being, but there's a good being called the turtle, which actually kind of guides.
What the fuck?
Yeah, there's like an evil, like so there's like a good being called the turtle, and then there's like, I think it's called like Gon or something like that, which is like almost like their father. It's like the supreme being, and part of what has to happen is when it is slumbering on Earth, it is actually kind of doing battle with these other two beings in other dimensions. Like it's super weird. Like even though it dies on Earth, Pennywise is also called like Mr. Gray. He shows up in like the Dark Tower series, and he shows up in Dreamcatcher as Mr. Gray kind of thing. So it's like the character is never really dead because it exists in multiple planes. But anyway, like we don't get that in either version. So like this is it literally is just a monster, and they defeat it pretty easy by the end.
Yeah, they just like kick it.
Yeah, and what I don't get, and this goes for both versions, he kills Georgie very easily. Like he talks to Georgie, and he ends up, just biting his arm and everything, and you don't see it. And then he got the girl pretty easily, and he just straight up kills 2 out of the 3 people in Henry Bauer's gang. Like nothing. Like he just like looks at them and they're dead.
Right.
I don't understand why, and this goes in the book in both versions, why Pennywise could not take on these children individually.
Well, I think they tried to address it with like all the kids saying when
fear?
we came together it was something different.
Right,
Yeah,
when
the
we
fear
come
thing too,
together,
right?
but I'm saying like when was it Eddie in the shower? He was by himself.
Yeah.
Why
But he
couldn't
didn't
it
even get
take him
near him. He
Right.
was in the drain.
And he grabbed Richie as the werewolf. Why didn't he get him?
Yeah, there were a lot of opportunities to kill
Right.
him that he
And
just
then
invited
even
them
in
down.
when they are fighting him at the end of the first half, they're all like doing their little thing like this isn't real, and then Eddie like sprays him in the face with the inhaler like this is battery acid and like melts his face. Like they're doing that, and then they set up Stanley like even though he's the most timid, that he's the first one to be able to defeat it. So as a kid, in one of the they do this after the fact, like after Stan has already been killed, and it's like 2/3 through the second half. They do a flashback with Stan, and they talk about how he saw Pennywise as a mummy in this house, and he's just started naming off all the birds that he knows, and it kind of like, because he wasn't afraid, because he wasn't focusing on his fear, he was able to get away. That I get. But he was doing the same thing when they were in the circle and it didn't work. Pennywise was able to overcome that and just grab him, and he was going to eat him. And then he just he takes forever. Like instead of just eating him, he had to do this little like, I'm Pennywise. I live off your fear. I'm the destroyer of worlds and whatever. Instead of just eating, and then he like opens his mouth and he's just like, like taking like 5 seconds to like move towards him, and then Bev's able to shoot him in the face with the least aerodynamic thing that you would shoot out of a slingshot. Like there's literally just like these lumps of silver. I don't get it.
I didn't understand that at all.
But they defeat him, and then Stan, like I just don't understand how they set up Stan saying like he was the first person to realize how to defeat him, but then like it only works the one time.
I don't know. That's it.
Yeah, and that's I think it's an issue in all of them. It comes down to like being the heroes that they have plot armor, but when they go to actually fight him as adults, there's a point where it's like it's a giant spider, and it's able to pick up and throw Eddie around.
Wait. How did Eddie die?
He got squished, I guess, and then dropped.
Yeah.
Good. All right. I guess
I don't know.
that.
But yeah,
'Cause he fell and he was still alive. There was no blood anywhere,
it's all internal, bro.
and then he died.
But yeah, he dies, and then they're just like they just decide to rally, and they literally just like ram the thing, and he falls over, and they just keep like kicking the shit out of it, and it's like that's it.
And they pull his heart out. Don't forget that.
To get the deadlights.
Yeah. Okay. That made sense.
Man, like,
And then
I'm
he
torn on
remembers
this.
Audra.
Right. Well, and that's the thing that's weird, and like that's a thing that this movie does. Like, there are a lot of things that are in this movie or miniseries that are not in the contemporary version, and like if this follows the book a lot more, like the first half of the newer stuff I think is fairly accurate. They changed some of the monsters that Pennywise comes as, but the second half is just a completely different. It completely departs from the source material. This is as good as you can possibly do for broadcast television. But there are some weird things, like I brought up the having the adult Stan's head versus having the kid's head. But I think they did a pretty good job with the flashbacks and making the flashbacks in the childhood come and be relevant when they're adults at key plot points. Like, I think they did a really great job with the back and forth. And I think they did a good job with the creepiness in terms of like only they could see these things. And I was actually really impressed with the Chinese food scene with the fortune cookies.
Yeah.
Like that eyeball looked really good, and the one that was kind of like hopping around, and the one that had the bug. Yeah,
Claw.
like that was creepy.
It was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like let's see.
I don't think the Audra stuff in Derry helped with anything.
Well, and the thing is, the whole thing is like it's because it was half-assed done. In the book, she's super supportive. She leaves like literally right after he does, like a few hours after he leaves.
Yeah.
And she is trying to save him, and then Pennywise captures her as like bait. But then the other thing that goes on is like Bev's husband was supposed to follow them as well, and he's like a second person. Like Pennywise kind of like not only does he kind of possess Henry Bowers, he also kind of possesses Bev's husband. And that doesn't come like wasn't really necessary for Audra. I don't think she really brought anything to it.
Right. I don't think so.
If he knew, because I think in the book he knew that Audra got taken beforehand, and so that was another reason why he had to go down.
The bike scene at the end.
Well, then that's in the book. Like that's actually in the book.
Let me wake you
but
up
in the movie,
out
it
of this
just was
coma by like dangerously riding down this hill.
She wasn't in a coma. She was catatonic.
That's what helped Stanley.
Yeah, it's true. I was totally on board with this the first half, but with the adults were so bad. Like, Bill was awful. The actor who played Bill was terrible, and like his stutter was really bad.
Way
Like,
over
it just
top.
wasn't. Yeah, and then like I really didn't like. What was with that weird subplot that Eddie's never had sex? Like, I don't understand why that
it
was relevant.
Like not relevant at all.
No, and it came out of nowhere.
Never found anyone I truly loved.
And then, like, Annette O'Toole's not a bad actress. Like, she plays the mom in Smallville. She was
Yeah.
Lana Lane in the Superman movies, and she's really bad in this. And then, I think John Ritter and the guy who played Adult Richie were the best. And like, John Ritter was not really a good actor. If John Ritter is one of the best actors in something, like, there's an issue. And there's a scene when. Let me see. I'm trying to find it in my notes. Oh yeah, so Annette O'Toole plays Bev, and like there's a point when she's after they kill Henry they decide to just leave Henry in the hotel room,
Yeah.
which is super weird. And then they just bring Mike to the hospital and say he fell on a knife while he was dancing.
On the table.
Yeah, but like Bev says something like, "Why is it doing this? Why is it so mean?" Like it's so bad and so over the top, and like. I don't know.
There's a lot of
I don't get it.
what I noticed is like a lot of the characters and the kid actors too, but they like to like convey stuff like off in a distance. So they'll like look off in a distance and they're like, I forgot what the Harry Bowers said, but he's like, he just looks off. He's like, he says something, and he's like, he turns back to his boys, and he's like, all right, let's go get them. I'm like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
what era am I watching this in? Like, why are you emoting to nothing? It takes you out of the TV show for those moments, because like Clark Kent's mom does it too, right before the Henry Bauer scene, the Henry scene with an adult. Yeah.
One thing I gotta say that this movie does well, and I think we should start wrapping this one up because we're definitely gonna go, like, we really haven't talked about like the Pennywise portrayal, but I think we will talk a little bit more about that once we talk about the newer Pennywise.
Yeah,
I think this movie did a great job of kind of setting up a destiny, which is something that's big in the Stephen King books, but they keep talking about how, Mike Hamlin finds the picture of Georgie, and it's like, no, it is time. Like, it is basically saying, like, it's now or never. We need to address this. And then later on, there's a scene where he has Silver, Bill's bike, and he talks about how he found the bike in a pawn shop, but 3 months prior, on a whim, he bought an inner tube for the bike because it had a flat wheel, a flat tire. And then at one, in one of the flashbacks when they're going through and practicing with the slingshot, and this is in the book, like in the book, all the boys are just like not good at it, and she hits every single one. They're like, oh, it's like she was meant to do it. And then it's like it sets up this whole thing like it's only them that can do it. And I think that's something that I thought was interesting, and they do it in the newer version, but to a lesser extent. They almost set up like a Final Destination type thing in the newer one, and we'll talk about it when we get to it. But I think we can kind of move on to the next one, because at this point I think there's a lot of stuff I still want to talk about this one, but I think it's really just we need to talk about the new one and then just compare and contrast.
Yeah,
sounds good.
I agree.
This one was a little tricky because it was 2 parts. So 2 parts that we wanted to cover this back 2 years ago, but we didn't really think it made sense when this ended up being only the childhood portion of the movie. So we had to wait a full 2 years to be able to cover the Stephen King classic It. And I think it was worth the wait. I'm glad we didn't cover it when it was only half the movie. And I'm ready to talk about it. Who's going to summarize it?
That would be me.
Wait, are we doing 2 summaries?
No, just one summary.
Just...
Oh, I guess this is kind of tricky. Just summarize it.
All right. In the summer of 1989, a group of bully kids band together to destroy a shape-shifting monster which disguises itself as a clown and preys on the children of Derry, their small Maine town. And that's from Arbitre.
Okay. You're going to summarize the second part too?
Oh.
It's the same thing, but they just do it as adults.
Yeah. What Mike said.
So the summary for the second one. 27 years after their first encounter with the terrifying Pennywise, the Losers Club have grown up and moved away until a devastating phone call brings them back.
Yarp.
Yep.
So, prior to this episode, have you guys seen part 1 already?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And you guys went and saw part 2, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Double D's been kind of having the donkey brains lately, so I was kind of worried he might not have actually gone and seen it.
I saw it today.
Good.
It's
good.
fresh.
I've seen the second part twice already. I saw it like opening weekend, and then I saw it again yesterday. So I've now seen this thing twice. I've put in, let's see, it's a little over 7 hours of content overall, but then I did it one of the movies twice. So I put in like 10 hours of content for this episode. So, and I've read the book, so I'm pretty much a Stephen King.
You mean you
expert.
listened to the book?
It's the same thing. I read it with my ears.
It's not a thing.
I read parts of it. I have it on Kindle as well.
He glanced the title
I
as it was being read.
Well, I've done that
with
a few
like
times.
Whisper Sync or whatever it's called, where the audiobook catches up with whatever you've read. Okay? You bitch.
Yeah, bish.
Anyway, what are some highlights in these 2 movies? I think it's going to be easier to talk about it as one giant movie versus talking about it in 2 segments.
I thought it was a little different from movie to movie, though. I mean, I felt like the second one was much funnier.
Yeah, the tone drastically was different, and it's the same team. That's the only thing that kind of bothered me about part 2.
Yeah.
Was it the same writers also? I thought that
Yes,
was...
I think so.
Wow.
And even if it wasn't the same writers, like when you have a 2.5 hour movie and it's a horror movie. Like, match the tone. Like,
Yeah,
it is a
for
little
sure.
weird, and I do have to give them props just right off the bat. That movie is 2 hours and 50 minutes. It's damn near 3 hours, and it does not feel that way. Even once I watched it the second time, it didn't feel like it was almost 3 hours long. The pacing in that movie is incredible.
It didn't drag, but I did feel like it was a long movie.
I
you're an idiot.
felt the adult.
I don't know
There's
how
some.
that's relevant.
Oh.
What did you say? I stopped listening because you're an idiot.
I said I don't know how that's relevant.
Because you have a short attention span, so it seemed longer because you didn't understand it. Because you're an idiot,
All right, whatever.
There's
you bitch.
there's sections of the adults that I didn't care much about compared to like the kids. I felt like the kids were actually had better chemistry compared to.
Yeah, I thought so too.
See, what I think is interesting is, and I agree with you to an extent, but I also think that could be slightly on purpose because the adults aren't supposed to really know each other or remember each other, and they're kind of starting to remember each other as it goes along. And I think the two that needed to have the chemistry the most would have been Richie and Eddie. But yeah, I do think those two worked very well together with Bill Hader. And honestly, I feel terrible. I don't remember I don't know the guy who played Eddie's name, and I don't know the guy who plays Stan's name, because they're not famous like the other three are.
True.
You got Professor X. You've got
Who's
Jessica Chastain,
Who's
who was in
Ben?
a really shitty X-Men movie. And then you had
Jessica
Ben.
Chastain.
I don't know Ben's. Oh, I forgot about Ben. I don't know his name either. I think he's an Australian actor who was on Neighbours, which is what every Australian actor is from. And then you had Isaiah Mustafa, who was the one of the Old Spice men, played Mike Hamblin.
Yeah, yeah, it is that guy.
I do have to say the casting of the adults is incredible. Like,
They did a
I've
great
never
job having
seen
a grown up.
kids to
version.
adults that looked so good. Like the guy who plays Eddie, spot on. Like he looks exactly like that kid,
Yeah.
just older. Same thing. Bill Hader looks close enough, but I think he did a good job. I think Eddie was the best. I think he did the best at taking the kids' mannerisms, like the fast, frenetic
Yeah.
kind of speech pattern and like the facial expressions. Even Stan, when you look at the guy who played Stan on his own, like outside, like during interviews, I was like, he doesn't look like the kid at all. But when they hit his little hair with the poof going to the side, he did actually look a lot like Stan.
Yeah, they did very well with that.
I agree. So the movie, I mean, the overall story is pretty much the same. They changed up from the original as well as the book. They kind of changed the things that scare the kids. So in the book, the book and the first miniseries, they kind of lined up with the same monsters and everything that people were afraid of. Although I don't remember seeing in the first movie the thing that scared Mike Hamblin. Did they show that?
No, they did not.
Yeah, and I don't think they showed the thing for. No, they did show Ben. In this one, they do change quite a bit from the
They have
book.
it backwards. It's like Mike in the first one introduces them to the history of Derry, and in this one, it's Ben that introduces them.
Well, and that's how it is in the book as well. Ben is actually the one who's initially interested in the history because he's a nerd, and then actually it's Bill who actually finds the book that has the ritual of Chud, which is how they defeat it. Now they change it in this. So like in the book, it's basically just a battle of wills, and it's called the ritual of Chud, and it's supposed to basically. The idea of it, what he read, was like you bite the other's tongue and then you tell riddles, and if one laughs, they lose. But it's basically just a battle of wills. In this, they had the ritual, but it was like just a bullshit ritual.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that
that's
they
weird.
changed quite a bit. Like Mike Hamblin is supposed to be a little crazy and a little off because he stayed in town, and which isn't really in the miniseries. In this, it's definitely there, but to the point where. Like, he's a legit crazy person. He's stealing from Native Americans. He drugs his friends. He straight up lies to them about magic rituals that don't exist. It's kind of crazy.
Well, I mean, he was supposed to be,
Yeah, a little bit.
All with
Yeah,
good,
it's
good
just-
but he
intent,
did
right?
stay in Derry.
He did. The other thing, and to go back to your guys' original thing, the tone being different, it did take me out of the movie sometimes. Like, it was too funny at certain points.
Yeah, I was just telling Alex earlier today. I was laughing way too much in this movie.
And, like, I didn't mind it when it made sense. Like, when they're in, like, the Chinese restaurant before they start seeing the weird shit coming out of the fortune cookies, totally makes sense. And, like, some of the stuff when they're by themselves, cool. But, like, they were making jokes as their friend Eddie was dying.
In the thick of it, yeah.
Yeah, and that didn't really make sense
Well,
to me. Like,
there's like this one joke. I think Eddie got stabbed in the mouth, and then he makes a joke to Henry where he's like, shave your mullet. It's been 30 years. I'm like, but
Yeah.
it's funny, but you got stabbed, bro. You're like,
Yeah, it's not the right time. And also, like, so Eddie dies in all three versions, the book, the miniseries, and this. And the miniseries was a little weird. Like, he just got picked up and dropped. And this,
Dropped and
he
he
gets
died.
stabbed. And he deserved it because he was showboating.
Yeah, but
That's
he
why you
made
don't
a joke
showboat.
as he died. Like, I fucked your mother. Like,
Yeah. I mean, and it's in line with what they were doing throughout. I thought the ending of this movie actually was pretty solid.
it
Like,
had
I did like
multiple
how...
endings, though. That's what threw me off. It felt
What do you
like
mean?
it was going to end after the clown sequence. And then they had like another tying up moment with like, oh, they're all saying their goodbyes. Okay, we're going to have another tie up moment with the letter. I'm like, well, how many endings does this
Yeah, and the
movie need to have?
the letter isn't in the book, like, or in the other version. Like, he just killed himself because he's a bitch. And this, they try to make it like Stan was actually killing himself for the betterment of the team,
yeah.
which,
Yeah, they're trying to make him save face, right? But
Right.
They
And
didn't. I don't feel like they didn't need to.
they
do
make some major changes with Mike as well. Like, Mike was in the hospital, like in the miniseries. Like, Mike gets almost killed by Henry
it by-
Bowers.
Yeah, he gets stabbed.
Yeah, and he ends up in the hospital. And this, they're like, well, we'll just have him come along, which, to me, honestly, from a narrative standpoint, I kind of like better because it's kind of fucked up that the person who had to like suffer in living in that town forever just gets kind of like nerfed
Left behind.
Yeah, and doesn't get to actually have the confrontation. He's the one that
The closure.
remembers everything and knows what's
Yeah.
going on.
I mean, it did make sense because he's the one that knew what the ritual was. So
Right. And like the whole, and I kind of liked that they obviously wanted to bring the kids back a little bit, and so they had these, which I can't remember if it was in the book or not, but after they do split up for a little bit, they each have
own
another encounter with Pennywise.
I don't think any of those encounters were in the first one.
No, they're not. They're
Yeah.
definitely not in the first movie. I don't remember if they're in the book or not.
I don't
Yeah.
even remember the split being that long. I thought it was like really quick. It was like a quick beat.
Yeah, that was like hours.
Yeah, they made it seem like, I think they said it was a month
Oh shit.
in this. Like, it was like about a month. Like, we weren't together for the whole summer, and it goes from like July to August. So, you know, that could be a couple of weeks.
I mean, at that point though, that makes it to what you said earlier about the other movie is like, if they're all split up, he definitely would have had a chance to kill them, and they should.
Right, and that's and even in this, it doesn't quite make sense why he's not able to.
Yeah, well, he killed that kid in the Hall of Mirrors, and he killed the kid under the bleachers with like very
With
quickly.
nothing,
Like,
that with
no investment,
almost
in
no
them.
and that's the thing that doesn't make sense. They're not elaborate. Even like in the movie, opens up with this like hate crime of these like
Oh yeah, that was
Hicks and
intense,
Derry,
yeah.
and that's how the book opens, and it's super intense. And they don't need to do it. Like, Pennywise literally just picks up this man who's dying, and obviously he's afraid just because he had the shit beat out of him, and then he was
Right.
thrown over a bridge. So, okay, I can get that guy's afraid, so he's able to just pick him up and eat him. But, like, the little girl under the bleachers, like, he didn't do anything other than lure
That
her
broke my
in.
heart, by the way. That was really sad. I couldn't. The whole like, oh, look at my face, and then he's trying to like get her to relate to him.
I thought that was a face painting thing because
Yeah,
they
I
had
thought
like
so,
the
too.
festival
I
until
thought
she
it was
said
just
it
like
was
a
something.
messed up Superman emblem.
Yeah, I thought it was like a weird heart thing, and I've seen this movie already, and I forgot that was a
Birthmark.
yeah, birthmark, disfigurement mark, kind of like in Ready Player One with the girlfriend. But yeah, I don't understand why with all the non-people, like main characters, he's able to just like show up as a clown and like just get them close, and then he bites their face.
Yeah.
Like, the girl wasn't really afraid of him at that point. She was like coming over because she thought that he was gonna blow her like the beauty mark off of her face.
Yeah, but I think she got scared when he didn't say 3.
Right. But that's only like, that's more like apprehension versus like full on fear. And same thing like with the kid in the fun house. That kid's terrified, I get it. But still, that was just him being the clown and bashing his head against a piece of glass until
Yeah,
it
I'd be
breaks.
scared shitless.
Like, I'd be scared too. So I get it. Like, why can't he do that with the others? And there's no reason why they were able to get away. Like the one with Ben running around, like running away from Beverly with her hair caught on fire. He goes and hides in a locker, and Pennywise is in the locker. Like, why did he wait so long to reveal himself? And then that one kind of makes sense because he took too long, and then he ends up being seen by a janitor, so it stops. But like the one with everybody else that they showed, there's really no reason that they should have got away.
Yeah, a lot of the time he just stops moving and laughs.
For no reason. Like when he goes against Richie, when he takes the form of the giant like Paul Bunyan statue,
That was crazy.
he just stops. Now Richie to an extent does say like, this isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real, but you can tell he's terrified and doesn't maybe necessarily believe it. But that one I can almost buy. But like everybody else's, it just stops.
Except for Eddie. Eddie choked out that leopard.
Well, no, he did that as an adult.
Oh,
I'm
that
talking
was
about as a
adult,
kid.
that's right.
Wait, what?
Oh, he ran away.
Oh, yeah.
From.
Yeah, he just ran away. So like, yeah, the leper was going to infect his mom, and he's trying to like save his mom in this vision. Oh, did you guys notice that the mom
was the same.
was the same actress as his wife?
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I didn't notice that.
And that's on purpose because in the book he marries somebody who's exactly like his mother.
Yeah.
So that I did like that attention to detail that they did that. But yeah, it still bothers me that they were so easy. They just had plot armor essentially.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't even once they were like confronting the giant monstrous form of, you know, as half spider, half clown. There's no way, like, that thing is so big and so fast. Like, how are they able to outrun it? And how are they, like, able to dodge its attacks without even seeing it? And it just, once again, it's plot armor until they needed to kill a character, and then they kill Eddie.
Yeah.
Poor Eddie.
Yeah. And like, I'm sounding very negative about this. I very much enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, no, I did too. I mean, I've enjoyed. I don't know. It's hard to say actually. Both parts were good in their own respect, but they were like we said, different tones.
It's on. I personally, I feel like for the first one, it is a really good horror movie with like some comedy inside of it. I like this part 2, but it's different. Like I think the jump scares were more predictable. Like I can definitely feel, oh, they're setting up, like there's this empty space right here, something's gonna pop up and something.
I do agree that the part with the kids, I feel like they put more effort into that one, and just reading some like interview stuff and reading some behind the scenes stuff, it definitely seems that way. And I gotta say I definitely went back and watched the part 1 again, and I think I said at the top of the episode that movie like kind of fucked me up initially because, you know, there was a point when I wanted to be a pediatrician, and, you know, I taught 5th grade math for a little bit for my internship, so for me, seeing kids get hurt is the worst possible thing, and that movie is brutal. Like, you see Georgie crawling around without an arm for several seconds, and he's like clearly in pain, and then you see him bite off a girl's head, and then you see him like, you see a girl's body hanging without any legs, and you see a bunch of dead bodies at the end of the movie. And when they're fighting it in part 1, when they just beat the shit out of it with like baseball bats and like steel rods, which I think is kind of funny that they just like beat the shit out of it. You see Ben gets like picked up, scratched, and thrown, and you see like blood splatter. You see a point where Stan gets his face bitten, and then to the point where he has to have bandages around his face, but he just literally has like teeth marks all the way around his face at certain points. And so it's like super graphic. Like, I feel like the part 2 wasn't as bad.
No, there was a lot of like blood squirting stuff, but
right. But like when the kid gets his head bit off in the maze, like the screen just goes red. Like you just see a splatter. Like you don't actually see it happen. And the same thing like when the little girl gets her head bitten off under the bleachers, it just goes to black. Like you just see him lunge, and that's like it.
Yeah,
it's almost like the head's getting eaten in Venom. Like you just see you just see the mouth open, and that's it. So like in some regards, this isn't as bad, but it's still, I don't know. Like the first one wasn't as gnarly as I remembered, but I think they put more effort into the scares. Like
the garage scene.
Oh, the garage scene's incredible.
It's the best. Like that
it is the best.
It wrecks up the intensity of that scare. Because
in that scene, the kids didn't know that was going to happen, so they filmed that, and that was the first time that they had ever seen Pennywise.
Really?
Yeah. So that was like not 100% expected. So those scares were genuine.
That's awesome.
One of the other things that
go ahead. That whole scene, like with
super
the
intense.
Slides coming through, just built up, and then coming out of the screen. Oh, that was so good.
Like how it zooms in on Georgie, and then it zooms in on his mom, and the mom turning into Pennywise, and then Pennywise jumping out of the projectors.
So fucked.
That was pretty gnarly. The other thing that I thought was really cool, and they did this as a combination of digital and practical effects, is when they're in the well house, there's a point where they open up the refrigerator, and this is when they were kids. It was in part 1. Pennywise contorts and twists out of the refrigerator.
Yeah.
And so they actually had Bill Skarsgård on wires and stuff, and the wires like twisted and pulled him out, and then they kept his face and his head, and then they CG'd to like lengthen his arms and kind of elaborate on his like the twisty movements. Like that's such a cool and creepy shot, and I feel like there was a lot more of that kind of stuff in part 1.
Definitely. Like
although the head the Stanley Uris head in part 2 was pretty gnarly.
That was cool.
Like
I liked
out
it,
of the thing.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. And I like, because I basically watched these movies back to back again. So I watched part 1 yesterday morning, and then I went to the movies in the evening and saw part 2 again. I like that the 3 doors thing, where it's not scary at all, scary, very scary. In part 1, they open one up and you see just like the little girl's body hanging with no legs. And then in part 2, they open up the same door and you see just the legs.
Yeah.
So that, you know,
It's a callback.
that attention to detail, like that's something that I feel like I really only noticed because I watched them.
Yeah,
in
there
the
was a
same
lot
day.
of stuff. Like the leper was the same leper every time, right?
Yeah, the
was
leper is
cool.
gnarly. And one of the things I thought was interesting about this, and I remember the CGI being worse, and like but it kind of works because it's like fantasy dream sequence kind of things. But the leper design was really cool. The headless boy instead of a mummy for Ben. Like I liked that too. Like when like Ben's looking at the book and he just keeps flipping through the book and it just keeps zooming in on a tree, and then eventually you just see a kid's head in the tree.
Yeah.
So then when he first encounters Pennywise, it's just a headless boy. I thought was kind of cool. So like there's certain things that this did really, really well, and drastically different from the book and the miniseries. Like they completely changed the monsters. There's no real, like there's no mummy, which was a consistent in the other versions. The thing that I thought was interesting is how drastically different Eddie's character was between the miniseries and the cinematic one. Because
I mean, they kept the same,
like the humor,
sort of
sure.
yeah.
But I mean, like when you watch the miniseries, the Seth Green version, like he's kind of like Bill's supposed to be the leader, which Bill is definitely the leader in this version. But I feel like Eddie was took more of a leadership role in the miniseries.
You mean Richie?
Richie?
Oh, sorry, no, yeah, Richie. I
Richie.
apologize. Yeah, Richie,
Comedian.
Yeah, like played by Seth Green. Like he's the one who's like, this isn't real. Bill, that's not real. Hey, Bev, that's not real. And then the werewolf grabs him. Yeah, I said this isn't real. And then this version, he was kind of more of the pussy in the movie until the end, and then for whatever reason Eddie's just the one that just doesn't react, and it makes more sense that Eddie is the person who's afraid, and he kind of freezes when Stan Uris's head is attacking everybody.
Yeah.
But Richie was the one who was like most vocally afraid.
Yeah,
which I thought was interesting.
I feel like he was just trying to have that comedic relief to make light.
No,
of the
but I mean, like
situation,
he was
right?
the one who was trying, like he was the one like, fuck this, I'm leaving.
Oh yeah.
And then he goes to the hotel, and Ben is trying to convince him to stay. And Ben comes out, okay, stay, and then he sneaks out the back. So he's the one who's constantly trying to get away. He's the one who like freaks out and yells at the little kid.
Yeah, he tried to leave as an adult a bunch of times.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And as a kid, that's right. He left as the
Yeah.
kid too. He was the one that like caused the schism.
Right.
Yeah.
Got punched in the face by Bill.
So that was kind of interesting how Richie was drastically different between the two versions. And I'd say the Richie in the movie is more accurate to the book, I think, but I don't really remember. Any highlights you guys want to bring up before we kind of start wrapping? Now, I do want to spend like some time discussing the two Pennywises in detail.
I do have a question for you though, because you read the book. Did they defeat? Because like
Listen.
how they defeated the monster, I find kind of lackluster.
Strange.
Because like they realize how they defeat them as kids is the same way they defeat them as adults. They realize, oh, we don't believe.
Well,
in
the
them.
thing is, they did and they didn't. So in the kids, they just realized, okay, they just can't be afraid.
Right.
But they can't. Yeah, in this, they force him. They do more of a bet. Like they just like, we're not afraid, so they beat the shit out of him, and it kind of hurts him. But they don't finish the job. In this version, they realize that their mental state it's not just about being afraid, that they can force it into a shape. So it's closer. So in the book, it is really like, it is just like a battle of wills. Like it is like Bill just like is saying that like the poem that he has that helps defeat his stutter. Like he just repeats that over and over and over again.
Yeah,
And
they didn't address his stutter in part 2, did they?
It like he
It
has it come
come
back
back.
every once in
Yeah,
a while.
that was it. I mean,
But that was
he
about it.
had it, but he didn't talk about it. at
And
all.
they didn't have like the whole Bev and Bill thing really as adults. Like
They had that
in this,
one kiss.
they had that one kiss before she remembered that it's Ben. But in the book, even in part 1, she realized like right before they were gonna fight Pennywise that Ben was the one who wrote it, and she just forgot that he was the one who wrote it. So I kind of like that. They did change Bill's thing with his wife. Like his wife's kind of a bitch in this one, and that's not.
Audra.
I kept
how it
expecting
feels.
her to
want you
come
to be.
back, but no.
Yeah, and they didn't have anything with her husband really. I did like how they had like a zombie one of the gang members came back as like a zombie to drive Henry
that.
around.
That was great.
Patrick or whatever.
Yeah, it was pretty gnarly.
And gave him his knife.
Yeah, and so like little things like that I liked. Like that's not in the book, but I thought that was kind of cool that they did that. Let's see. I'm just going through and reading my notes and see if there's anything I want to talk about before we hit.
I liked the Henry Bowers in this version.
Oh yeah, this version he's like fucking crazy. It's weird that they made his dad a cop because his dad was supposed to be this like racist farmer in the original that killed Ben Hanscom's or Mike Hanscom's dog, and like killed a bunch of chickens on Mike Hanscom's not Mike. Why am I saying Mike Hamlin's dog and like Mike Hamlin's chicken. So that was a little interesting that his dad was a cop. I did kind of like how their whole way to bring the kids into the movie was they had to go back and find a talisman, which is in the book that they had to like go back and remember. So they had to go find a place that was special to them.
But I wish that was like more set. Yeah, Horcruxes. It's more set up in the first one though. Like, hey, this is silver. Put more emphasis on silver and the other things. But like, I felt like it was just kind of.
Well, and that's where I think the first movie miniseries did well too, with like this is battery acid, and then them using silver because they think silver has mystical properties for killing monsters. So because they believe that silver hurts monsters, it does hurt Pennywise. So they didn't really do that in this. And that's where the big thing with Pennywise is supposed to be, wants them to come back as adults because their imaginations aren't going to be as strong. And so they're supposed to be, and the kids don't do that at all, where the whole, this is acid, this is silver, this will hurt you guys. Like, they literally just beat the shit out of them.
Right.
And they don't do that. So it kind of makes less sense that the adults are like, well, we'll just imagine your other things. Like, there's no setup for that. Other than like a weird thing that Eddie said where it was like, when he was the leper, I could choke him and I could feel him, I can hurt him. So they're like, oh, well, if we make him small, then we can hurt him. So it's kind of like a bullshit line of dialogue that realized they can do that. But I really liked all the shit as adults too, where they had to like, Bev filling up that thing with blood, the bathroom stall, and then Ben was getting buried.
Yeah, that was really cool. I liked all of that.
Dude, it was fucking gnarly. Like Bill killed Georgie and himself in like this weird fantasy sequence. That's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, the blood stall, the buried alive, the three doors. Those are all
the
really
old
cool.
lady sequence is still the best.
It was creepy. Well, that was fun. That was the first trailer where they basically just showed
the whole thing.
that scene, and it's like
Super
her weird
creepy.
little Rocky walk. Even that was kind of fucked up. Like, why did she stay? Like, she got her towels, but she could have just left.
Yeah,
I don't
would have
know.
left. I would have left when she said she's gonna go get those cookies.
Right. So I really like that scene with the shower caps where Richie's like, we're not afraid of spiders, and then the camera pans, they're all wearing the shower caps since they're in that little underground tunnel for their clubhouse. I thought that was pretty clever and funny. But I do want to talk about Pennywise. Which version of Pennywise did you guys like better?
The movie.
It depends on what aspect of Pennywise we're talking about.
I'd say if you had to give him an overall
Overall rating of Pennywise?
Yeah.
Ooh,
Which one would
that's
you
tough.
go for? I know which one I prefer.
Definitely the movie.
Yeah, that movie.
I think what I really liked about this one is it was less monotone. Like the Tim Curry one basically just did that like weird New York guy, like, hello, Georgie, and like had the same voice pretty much the whole time, except for like when he was about to get defeated. He's like, I'm the destroyer of worlds. Like he was pretty much the same all around. But this one with Bill Skarsgård, like him moving his eyes in opposite directions, which is something that the actor can actually do. That wasn't CG or anything. What's his name? Why can't I think of his name right now? The guy who plays adult Richie.
Bill
Bill Hader. Bill Skarsgård did that on set and freaked the fuck out of Bill Hader because he didn't know that was real. But what I really appreciate, I read this in an interview, but they were saying that the kid who played Georgie in the original one was like super afraid of Tim Curry, and he told Tim, like, Tim, you're scaring me, and Tim Curry was like, good, kind of thing. So he went a little method with it, but it turns out like all the kids really liked Bill Skarsgård in the newer version. Like he would tell jokes and he was funny. And I think there's something to that. Like, I don't like this whole like trend with actors being method.
Yeah,
because it's like you're an actor. Like you should, like your whole job is to pretend. You should be able to do it without all the crew having to call you the actual name. And it's kind of unhealthy to like not be able to do that. And to an extent, like I understand, like Daniel Day-Lewis when he did the Phantom Thread, like he wanted to learn how to make a dress. So when he's sewing on the movie, like it looks like he's know what he's doing. Cool. I understand if an actor's playing like a rock star that they want to learn how to do a few chords so it looks like they're playing the guitar a little bit more, authentically. But like the ones with like Jared Leto only answering to the Joker and shit like that, like that's kind of fucked up and weird. And if you have to go to that dark place to be able to do it, there's something wrong with you. But I like that Bill Skarsgård didn't do that. But what I liked about his Pennywise is he wasn't monotone. Like when he's getting Georgie, he's like, he does like his voice goes deep and it goes high and is like, we've got popcorn, pop, 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 pop. Like he has some fluctuations in his demeanor, and he yells and screams and he gets dark and then he gets funny. I just think that makes a more compelling villain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially for what he is adapting to each situation, I think that works very well.
And same thing with the little girl, like, like he pretends to cry. He's like, well, people think I'm ugly. And then she's like, people laugh at me too. And he's like, do they? Like, he showed like genuine excitement, like he was really trying to lure this person in.
He's like a caricature, like a clown, essentially, which is great.
Yeah, which makes sense. And I do think his design is way creepier with like the Victorian kind of garb.
Yeah.
And I really like that his scene when he like puts he's like a human and then he puts like the white paint and then he like scratches his face open.
Yeah, that was my favorite Pennywise.
That was
scene.
great.
The body language that the Bill does for this character is really good. Like I forgot there's a sequence, but like he's in the background doing something, and it's just like the way he moves is just really creepy and eerie. And I feel like he really embodies that character, which is what makes him great.
Yeah. What I like about him as well, in an interview, he was talking about when he went to do the audition for this, he had to go in clown makeup for like one of his like callbacks. And he's like driving around Los Angeles and like face paint as a clown. And he just recognized the absurdity of it. He's like, that's the business. Like, here I am dressed as a clown, but that's essentially what I'm doing is I'm clowning around in Los Angeles for the job. Like, he understands that his job is absurd and the character's absurd. And so he has a much better like grasp mentally on what he should be doing. But overall, I really enjoyed these. I don't get from all three versions, the movie, the book, and this, like why it was so easy for the losers to get out of trouble. Like, it really is just plot armor. And anytime someone does die, it's just because Stephen King wants someone to die. Like, it didn't, I don't feel like anybody's death was really earned from the main characters. But what do you guys think? Should this have been remade?
Yeah, I really enjoyed all the cinematic features of this remake.
Yeah, and I think that it did enough different from the miniseries. Like, the miniseries covered a lot more of the weird stuff. I did like how this had some of the stuff for the town. Like, the miniseries didn't do any of the stuff with like the town, like the hate crime or anything like that. It showed one victim who wasn't one of the main characters. So I do kind of like that. I don't like that this one.
Wait, it just shows the hate crime, but I don't feel like it had like a resolve to it though. Like, it wasn't message.
This one did a little bit better with like when Ben is going to get his like stomach carved up and somebody just drives by. I think they did a better job with that. And then I guess the only thing I didn't like about this one was the whole Bill trying to like save that kid. Like, that's not in the book.
If he had saved the kid, I would have enjoyed it.
If he had saved the kid, or if he like became like a fugitive, like if Pennywise framed him for the kid's murder, that would be interesting as well. Like, they had to like dodge the police and get where they needed to go. But like, ultimately, this kid gets killed and he just leaves this kid's body in a maze and walks off. Like, it's kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, and all he's concerned is with like nobody likes the ending of his books.
That joke kind of got tiring though.
It did. And yeah, it was just like, I don't know. Like, I don't think Bill was done justice like in either version. I think Bill as a kid was good.
Yeah.
But I don't think adult Bill was good in either version. And I don't get me wrong. Like, I love
James McAvoy is amazing.
I think James McAvoy is a really underrated actor. I do like his American accent, because most British people, when they go to American, they just make their voice a little deeper, like Benedict Cumberbatch. Where he makes his voice go higher and slightly whinier as American. Like, he does it a little higher in this, and also in like Wanted. His voice is really kind of high and whiny.
Well, I mean, that was the character in Wanted too. He was
but it's also like, even once he gets confident, like there's a point when he kills his first mark when he's on the train and he kills that guy in the office, and he's like, Oh no, he's in the car and the car flips over and he's like, "I'm sorry," and kills the guy. Like I just think it's funny that James McAvoy's American accent is like high pitched, like higher than his regular voice, when compared to like his child Xavier, like, "I don't want your future." Anyway, I think we were unanimous that this was a good remake and something that was definitely worthwhile. I like it a lot.
I like it a lot.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to Remake Rewind. We're no longer on Podcoin because Podcoin's been shut down.
What?
I just got the email from that the other day saying that it's shut down. So, fuck Podcoin.
Rip.
But listen to us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, the same thing, Stitcher, and Google Play. We're also on YouTube. Check out our other great podcast, Ruined by Childhood. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening.
Oh, yeah.
Later.
See ya.